Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2015 to 2016 series, Gotham by Midnight. When DC rebooted into the New 52, I honestly expected them to try a lot of new things and go out on some limbs, but that didn't really happen. Instead, they seemed to go and almost by the numbers routine for all their comics that made the vast majority of New 52 series feel like they were all trying to be the same thing. I'll let you decide if that's a good thing or a bad thing in general, though I will say in my experience it was sometimes a good thing and sometimes bad. After a few years in the Convergence event, especially once DC dropped the New 52 imprint title on all their comics, they seemed to be willing to be a bit more experimental with the flavors of comics that were coming out. This led to some pretty different stuff, like Dick Grayson joining Spiral, Catwoman becoming a mob boss, Superman becoming depowered, Batgirl moving to Burnside and the tone of the series shifting much more lighthearted, and Batman becoming a robo-bunny suit worn by Jim Gordon. I really need to get to where I can talk about that more because it is something. It also led to DC releasing some completely new comics that were very different in style and theme, like last week's Gotham Academy and this week's Gotham by Midnight. And no, I'm not just doing a series of comics with Gotham in the title. This was just a coincidence. I can't explain in advance too much of what Gotham by Midnight is without explaining everything about it, which I'll leave for the main part of the video. So for now, by way of introduction, I'll just say it's sort of an X-Files-y supernatural detective story with epic superhero moments set in Batman's hometown, the well-known fictional city of Gotham. It focuses in on a task force in the Gotham Police Department that specializes in investigating the paranormal. And if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, well then boyo, strap in, cause have I got a comic to show you. So let's take this away. The comic opens on Internal Affairs Officer Sergeant Rook arriving at Precinct 13, home of the Detailed Case Task Force. As Rook points out, no one really knows what a detailed case is or why this group is called that. I'm guessing it has something to do with the initials being DC. You get it. The GCPD's DCTF is led by Lieutenant Sam Weaver here, though honestly, he's not in the comic a whole lot and we never learn much about him. Beyond that, about 2 years earlier, Commissioner Gordon, recognizing the need for a police force that would deal with the supernatural, assigned Weaver to lead the department after he experienced something unexplainable. Speaking of characters we never learn much about, also here is Dr. Xander Tarr, whose name might just be a double reference, with his first name possibly a nod to the mad scientist Ivo Shandor from Ghostbusters, in the Dr. Tarr part an even more likely reference to an Edgar Allan Poe story about lunatics running an insane asylum, which is just such an appropriate reference for a Batman-related comic to make. Tarr is a consultant, not an actual cop, who seems to be some kind of scientific genius in just about every field, making him useful for studying the brand new fields of bizarre paranormal phenomena that they'll be investigating in this comic. Also a consultant with the department is a nun, Sister Justine, who we're told is an expert in, things. You know, things. She was once a nun working at the Faith Community Church of Gotham, which doesn't sound especially Catholic to me, but I guess what do I know? That had apparently been taken over by some serious demons. Demons that would have likely killed her if not for the appearance of Jim Corrigan. Old school DC fans will recognize Corrigan as the human host of the Spectre, the embodiment of the vengeance of God. A very old member of the Justice Society of America. The Spectre would actually eventually come to be hosted by Hal Jordan and then still later by Gotham PD officer Crispus Allen. But the New 52 reset things back to Corrigan. In this timeline, Corrigan was a Gotham cop who was shot while looking for his kidnapped fiancée. But despite being dead, the voice of God spoke to him and made him the host for the Spectre, who here, instead of just another super strong dude in tights, is a sort of ghostly manifestation that apparently judges all sinners around it and murders them with wanton abandon. Corrigan seems to be unable to even determine when the Spectre will come out, and instead, when he is surrounded by enough evil, he's just overcome by the Spectre's desire to punish that evil, and the Ghost Man comes out like a bomb, violently killing everything in its path. Which is what happened when Corrigan showed up to the Faith Community Church, leading him to burning to skeletons most of the people present at the church. Though Sister Justine doesn't receive so much as a scratch, leaving Corrigan convinced that she's some extra pure spirit. For that, he asked her to join him in battling the forces of darkness at the precinct. Because Corrigan is one of two actual police detectives working for Weaver, the other being Detective Lisa Drake. Drake was apparently once working undercover, which I guess is why she's allowed to continue to dress like she fell out of a Hot Topic in the early 2000s. I thought cops had pretty strict clothing regulations. I guess even if they did though, the whole point of Precinct 13 is that they're kind of breaking the rules, so fair enough. I mean, I'm not complaining. I like her style. While undercover, she seemed to be dating this guy Fred, who apparently has been buying and then reselling some drug called skull dust. Really? Skull dust? Okay. Drake goes with Freddy to get some more skull dust supply, but the real suppliers, aware of what he's doing, are like, you don't want to buy skull dust, you want to go home and rethink your life. No, actually, they decide to induct him further into the organization by having him prove his loyalty by shooting a cop they have tied up in the trunk of a car. The cop happening to be Corrigan. But this time, it's not Corrigan that saves the day by turning into the Spectre, but Drake instead unleashes a scream that momentarily stuns everyone, and then she shoots the drug dealers dead and arrests Freddy Boy. Corrigan reveals that Skull Dust isn't a clever nickname like Angel Dust, it's literally ground up skulls. Just those skulls come from magical beings called Chi. And as it turns out, Drake just happens to be one of those creatures. Yeah. A changeling replacing a human baby with a fairy creature that grows up with a magical ability to sense when death is coming, and when it's close enough, she can't hold it in any longer and she screams. As with Sister Justine before her, Corrigan asked Drake to join his little X-Files group to help him investigate weird magical stuff, and now after a few years of operating, we're apparently ready to drop in on them in action with the start of the comic. Which brings us back to Rook, the internal affairs officer showing up at Precinct 13. It seems someone is building a case against the DCTF, with their cases closing about as mysteriously as they open. Corrigan asks Rook to ride along on their cases, thinking he'll understand a lot better what they do at the department if he does. So their first case has them investigating some children who had been kidnapped but were recovered, though now they speak in this weird Sumerian-looking language. Because of a black flower painted outside on the house of the kidnapped children, Corrigan takes Rook out to Slaughter Swamp, a place apparently famous for such black flowers. Although DC fans will know it better for being the place that turned Cyrus Gold into the zombified supervillain Solomon Grundy. There they find an entire schoolhouse of children kidnapped from Gotham by this horrifying demonic nun thing. Corrigan is able to banish the nun ghost so they can rescue the kids, but it looks like all these kids are also speaking the weird language. The group next investigates a girl quarantined in a hospital due to her apparently having smallpox, a disease that shouldn't exist in the world anymore thanks to vaccines having eliminated it. Because vaccines work, people. Where was I? Oh, right. The girl also has a terrifying shadow that takes on a life of its own and I guess starts spreading smallpox as it travels. But Dr. Tar manages to delay it because he's learned some of the bizarre language somehow, even though I'd like to point out that learning a dead language with no discernible links to other languages is a practically impossible feat no matter how smart you are. But yeah, I'm just getting off on another tangent, so anyway, they deal with the monster by burning the shadow near where it connects to the little girl. That seems kinda irresponsible, but I guess it works. The knowledge they've gained of the dead language convinces them that what they're dealing with is either a creature with 5 parts or 5 creatures, because they come up with 5 names. We've seen 2 so far, with the nun ghost being Ovovo and the smallpox shadow being Icht, so you might think we're gonna go through all 5 in further investigations, but I guess they had to wrap things up because we skipped to the big one from here. Ichondrid, who attempts to attack Corrigan and Rook while they're at a bar, causing the Spectre to come out, and Ichondrid and Spectre proceed to have a kaiju battle in the middle of Gotham City. At this point, Tar has managed to determine the secret behind Ichondrid. It seems Gotham City, like much of America, was founded on the murder of Native Americans, though in this case those indigenous peoples were completely wiped out of existence. The comic doesn't actually name those people, but I believe they're referring to the fictional Miyagani tribe. So Ichondrid as the embodiment of vengeance for the Miyagani, and so the manifestations have been taking the form of things colonials had done to Native Americans, taking the children and teaching them new languages and cultures so that they're strangers to their own families, introducing strange, dangerous diseases to the population, specifically smallpox, and lastly, plotting complete and utter genocide. Wow. Damn. When you put it that way, Ichondrid, you really do seem less evil. Happy belated Indigenous Peoples Day, everybody. The Spectre and Ichondrid seem to come to some agreement, and Ichondrid returns to the swamp, but a scream from Drake lets us know that we didn't get away clean. And as it turns out, Sister Justine is found dead shortly after offering herself to God in order to spare the city. That moves us into the second volume, which sees the team investigating a few more standalone mysteries, like these people who have some weird plant thing growing into them from the ground, and that seems to cause them to just lie down and die. Or a story where they run across the Gentleman Ghost, who we last saw on this channel in The Savage Hawkman. Oh yeah! But here his backstory seems to be a little different, as they give him a bit more of a Beauty and the Beast type story, and he claims that all he wants is a jewel that belongs to him. To get it, he's been seducing people with a hypnotic gaze that we see him use first on this woman who he steals the jewels from, then on Lieutenant Drake to get away from her, and lastly on Corrigan, which is a moment I really enjoy. I'm not sure if they're trying to say something about Corrigan here or if they just really wanted to mess with people, but either way, I'm fine with it. They also help solve a murder revealed by the appearance of a ghost at the Powers Corporation. Now, those unfamiliar with New 52 Batman, which I realize might be all of you guys since I haven't covered it on my channel yet, and sorry about that, seriously, I'll get to it. You might not recognize the Powers Corporation, but they're actually the ones that design a replacement Batman mech suit after Batman is presumed dead following Joker Endgame. Jim Gordon resigns as commissioner and assumes the role of the Mech Bat, but that's a problem for Precinct 13 because they were protected by Gordon. With him gone, the internal affairs investigation heats up, leading to the IA serving up warrants to search their offices, and they even arrest and interrogate both Drake and Corrigan, attempting to try to get them both to turn on each other. And I love how they point out that this is Gotham, so all of Corrigan's supernatural shit isn't really that weird to them, which is kinda what I've been thinking for this whole comic. I mean, yeah, they deal with shit like this in Gotham all the time. It's not exactly bizarre in a world with people like Solomon Grundy and Superman, but okay. But the interrogation of Corrigan goes really south when they provoke him enough that the Spectre just kind of bursts right out of Corrigan and holy shit! Oh my god! That is bloody holy crap! This video would definitely get demonetized if, you know, it was monetized in the first place. The Spectre reveals to Corrigan that he was never really an independent entity, but had always done what Corrigan actually wanted. He just somehow didn't realize that. Which is why he kills these cops now, because he says that is what Corrigan wanted. Drake, not privy to this revelation, attempts to get Corrigan out of the police station to get the threat of the Spectre popping up to do more damage away from everyone, leading to a giant car chase across Gotham in several double-page spreads that I'm sure they thought would look very cool, but I can't really follow whatever action is supposed to be happening here. Although I will say I like the little nod to Batman writer Jim Aparo they make here with an expressway named after him. I love having locations in fictional cities named after important creators in the character's history. That's fun. Drake ends the chase by driving the car off a bridge while Corrigan seems to explode with the Spectre, and the two detectives are presumed dead. But no sooner are they gone than a conjured rolls back into town, this time bringing with it an army of zombies! Of all the people who ever died unjustly in Gotham. Which, I'm sure you can imagine, if you're a longtime Batman fan, is a lot of people. So with zombies filling the city, suddenly everyone wants Precinct 13's help. So conveniently for everyone involved, it turns out Drake and Corrigan didn't blow up. Or, if they did, they got better. So Spectre again appears to kaiju fight Echondrid, only this time it gets even more complicated. Because by now, Tar has realized that the black flowers aren't manifesting from Icky over there as they had all been assuming, but instead were attempting to warn people about threats. So he follows the flowers to find a hidden shrine dedicated to Sister Justine. And she shows up as a spirit as well, being channeled through Doc Tar like the Spectre is through Corrigan, and she joins in on the big battle. And then I'm gonna be honest and say that I don't exactly know what happens from here. Corrigan seems to realize that Echondrid is something like Gotham's feeling of guilt more than it's the embodiment of its evil, and so he just kinda asks for forgiveness, and the three giant entities just seem to kinda forgive everyone, I guess. And everyone's souls seem to return to their proper places, and the entities leave and the sun dawns, and we get to the breakdown. This book is just so right up my alley. It's very much the X-Files with a much stronger slant toward horror, and I love the way it has sort of the individual haunts and mysteries, and yet they all tie together into an overarching mythology. Episodic and seasonal all at once. That's so my kind of thing. Writer Ray Fox is clearly talented at this kind of thing too. His dialogue is sharp and natural, the narration flows well through the story, never giving too much away but always adding just the right atmosphere, and he gives his characters just enough depth to seem interesting. And I would have loved to have seen where they grew if the series had been allowed to go on for longer. I'm not personally a fan of the first artist, Ben Templesmith. I don't like scratchy, wavy styles that seem like their main goal is to hide bad art. I know a lot of people will feel it's very appropriate for the horror atmosphere though, and really they're not wrong. While I don't like his art, I can't deny that it does a great job of emphasizing the creepy parts of the story. Juan Ferreira, on the other hand, does the art for Volume 2, and I am quickly becoming a fan of his work. His art style is gorgeous and does wonders for the second story arc, and I feel he finally gives the characters a visual depth to match the writing. The book's biggest weakness is its length. The ending felt very rushed, as though it's there only so there can be an ending and not because it organically reached that point. And man, do I want more. So for all those reasons, I'm giving this series a recommendation level of high. If it had lasted longer, I bet this series could have really thrived. Instead, it's mostly just a notable curiosity for fans of horror comics. The collected editions get 1 Black Flower and 1 Old Ghost's Family Jewels. Wait, that sounded wrong. You know what I meant. That is technically moving from bad to good, but it's really not so different, and it breaks down like this. Volume 1 is a meager 5 issues, but it does have several pages of bonuses including alternate covers and character sketches. Volume 2 has 7 issues and an annual, but only a couple alternate covers as bonuses. Still, that much collected in one book gets a step up in my mind. Thanks everybody for watching, and we're going strong into Spooky October. Oh yeah! If you have a favorite horror comic, let me know what it is in the comments below, and maybe I'll even try to cover it in a future update. Other than that, as always, please feel free to like, subscribe, comment, and all the good stuff, and then just make sure that you're here next time, and I hope to see you then, right here in the Comic Cave.